Last night's 49ers Panthers Monday Night Football game left a lot to be desired, but somebody had to win, and we'll go over that. Wasn't the greatest game by any means, but we'll go over that and you tell me what you think. But also, today is Top 5 Tuesday. Well, I'll give you my top 5 teams in both college football and the NFL for the current week. Not much is going to, I don't think anything's going to look different in college football, but my NFL top 5 might look a little different. And plus, today, I'm going to give you the clinching scenarios for all the teams that are still alive for berths in their conference championships in the Power Four Conference, the SEC, Big Ten, Big 12, and ACC. I'm going to try to make some sense of that for you today, here in the Ozone. Big O with the big mouth coming at you on a Top 5 Tuesday, November 25th, 2025. Only 2 more days before that big turkey day for everybody. Getting close. I mean, this year's gone fast. It really has. It's like you blinked and boom, we're in June. And then blink again, it's August. And blink, the college football season ends its regular season this weekend already. And we're in the holiday season already. Wow, time goes fast nowadays. But we still got to tread on with the time. So let's get into it. Last night, 49ers, Panthers out in Levi Stadium. Well, let's just put it like this. Not too many teams that I know are going to survive 3 turnovers, 2 of them in the red zone, and still win the game. But somehow, some way, the San Francisco 49ers did just that last night. Despite Brock Purdy throwing 3 interceptions, I believe 2 of them were in the red zone, the 49ers still were able to come out on top with a 29 victory at home over the Carolina Panthers. So what does that say about the Panthers? When you get 3 interceptions, you got to turn those into points. You got to turn at least 2 of those 3 interceptions, especially on the road. If you're getting 3 interceptions, you got to turn at least 2 of those turnovers into points. And I don't mean field goals, because that's all they did last night. They had Carolina had 1 touchdown and 1 field goal. They were dominated statistically. I mean, the 49ers had almost double time of possession. They had more yards on the ground. They had more yards in the air. They controlled this game. But Carolina was still in it because of the turnovers. And if they could have did anything on 3rd down, they were 1 for 7 on 3rd down for the night. If they could have did anything on 3rd down and kept drives alive, they could have had a chance to steal this game from the 49ers. But as it said, they couldn't do that. They bogged down their own offense. And Bryce Young, he threw a red zone interception in the back of the end zone. It was a great interception. If you saw that game, it was a really, really, really spectacular play by the 49ers defender in the back of the end zone. Spectacular interception. But still, this is a game I believe the Panthers have to learn. They're young, they're young. They're still learning. They've gotten infinitely better than they were the last couple of years. Much better. But they got to learn. This type of game, when you get 3 turnovers from the other team, you got to turn them into points, especially on the road. I mean, the home teams, it all depends on who that home team is. They can usually, It's not often, but it leans to the way that the home team can survive 2, maybe 3 turnovers and still pull out the win, especially if you had a lot more talent on the team than the other team does. So if you're the road team, like the Carolina Panthers were last night, you've got to turn those turnovers, at least 2 of those turnovers, into 6 points, not 3 points, 6. They did that. Carolina might have won this game, but they couldn't do nothing with the turnovers. And they were 1 for 7 on third down. The 49ers stopped them when they needed to. They made those critical plays when they needed to. And they were able to eke out a rather ho-hum 20-9 win at home. So this is a bit of a learning lesson for the Carolina Panthers. You know, like I said, they're young, they've improved, they're still young, they're still learning. Game like this, when you have been dominated offensively, statistically wise, but you get turnovers, you got to turn them into points. You got to, especially when you're the road team. Great teams do that. They take advantage of the miscues by the other team, and they turn those opportunities into points. Carolina's learning that. They had opportunities, they blew them, and that's why they lost last night. Brock Purdy, 193 yards, 1 touchdown, but he threw 3 interceptions, 2 of them in the red zone. You know, like I said, most teams, they're not going to survive with their quarterback throwing three picks. This team did. Testament to their grit and their defense. The defense keeping them in the game despite a bad night from their quarterback. That's what great teams do. That's what championship teams do. And right now, the 49ers, 8-4. They're right in the mix in the NFC West. I believe they're, a game or 2 behind the LA Rams. So they're right there in the mix for the NFC West. Problem is, they're done with the Rams. They already split with the LA Rams. So they don't play them no more. So, but they did split. So for the 49ers to somehow squeak out this division, the Rams going to have to slip a little bit. I don't see that happening. Not the way that offense with the Rams is humming. But the 49ers are right there for a wild card spot. They're right there in the middle. They should have one of the wild card spots at 8-4. But we still got some games to play. We're going to see how this finishes out. Everybody got now, I think, 6 games remaining. So we're going to see how this plays out. But last night, a 20-9 home victory for the San Francisco 49ers. Panthers, you got to learn. You're learning. That's all I can say. You're learning. Big O with the big mouth, Total Sports Ozone. Now, let's get into what I said I was going to get into yesterday about these clinching scenarios in college football. Last week in the regular season, last weekend, it is traditionally rivalry week where most of the teams play their traditional rival this weekend. But there's still clinching scenarios. Really, nothing has been decided. Nothing as far as conference championship appearances. One team had a chance to clinch a berth in the conference championship game last weekend, and he blew it. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, nothing's been clinched. We've got all these great teams. All the top 5 teams, they've been the top 5. At least 4 of those top 5 been up there all year long. Nobody has clinched the thing yet. No berths in the conference championships on the Power 4 have been clinched as of right now. So what does that say? Parity is alive and kicking in college football. When nobody has clinched a berth in their conference championship game yet, and it is coming down to the last weekend of the regular season. And we got all these clinching scenarios. That means parity is live and well in college football. And I think it's just going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. Especially when teams like Clemson and a couple others get their head out of their butt and get into this transfer portal and this NIL thing. They don't want to be left behind. So if I'm Dabo Swinney and a couple of other coaches, you might want to dab your toes into the transfer portal and the NIL just a little bit, and see what you come up with. As it may, let me see if I can make some sense out of all these clinching scenarios. Okay, now I'm taking this from many publications online, and these are all taking effect. Tiebreakers like strength of schedule, strength of record, and all that other good stuff. So let's start with the SEC. Currently, there are 4 teams still alive to go to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. There's Texas A&M, Georgia, Alabama, and Ole Miss. Now, for Texas A&M and Alabama, the road to the SEC championship is easy. All they got to do is win their last game. Texas A&M has to go to Texas, play the Longhorns, and Alabama is taking on Auburn in the Iron Bowl. So it's easy for those two. All they got to do is win. They win their games, they're meeting in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. Now, Georgia does not play an SEC opponent in their last game. They're playing their traditional rival in Georgia Tech. But they are both in different conferences. So, for Georgia to get into the SEC championship game, remember, they have one loss to Alabama. So, for Georgia to get in the SEC championship game, either Texas A&M or Alabama have to lose. That's the only path for Georgia. Whether they win or lose Saturday is irrelevant because it's a non-conference game. But for them to get to the SEC championship, Georgia must have either Texas A&M or Alabama lose. Now, for Ole Miss, they're pretty much in the outside looking in of all the 4. For them to win to get into the SEC championship, they have to beat Mississippi State in their traditional rival, the Egg Bowl, and have both Alabama and Texas A&M lose. So they're the ones that have to win, and they're the ones that need the most help, is Ole Miss. They have to win and have Alabama and A&M lose. Are the likely scenarios? Remember, this is rivalry weekend. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. But those are the scenarios that are left for the 4 remaining teams alive for the conference championship bid in the SEC. So again, A&M, Alabama win, they're in. Georgia needs either Alabama or A&M to lose, and Ole Miss needs to win and have both Alabama and A&M lose. Crazy, ain't it? That's the SEC. We ain't got to the ACC yet. We'll get there in a minute. Let's move on to the Big Ten. The Big Ten has anywhere of 7 scenarios that could have 7 different matchups in the Big Ten championship game. Remember, Ohio State and Indiana are both undefeated. But then right behind them is Oregon and Michigan. That's right. Michigan with 2 losses, even though they only have 1 conference loss, they're still in the mix to go to the Big Ten championship game. Crazy. So let me try to decipher this as best as I can. Now, scenario 1. Scenario 1 is easy. If Indiana and Ohio State both win their last game, Indiana plays at Purdue, and Ohio State plays that team up north. If them two teams win, they're meeting in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship. Now, here we go with the craziness. Scenario 2. If Indiana beats Purdue, and if that team up north beats Ohio State, and Oregon beats Washington, Indiana and Oregon will meet for the Big Ten championship game. Following me so far? That's the second scenario. Here's the third scenario. If Indiana beats Purdue, that team up north beats Ohio State, and Washington beats Oregon, Indiana and that team up north will meet for the Big Ten championship based on tiebreaker. Basically, based on the tiebreaker of Ohio State and that team up north. Here's scenario 4. If Ohio State beats that team up north, and if Purdue somehow, some way, by some miracle, beats Indiana, and Oregon beats Washington, that will be Ohio State and Indiana again. Scenario 5. Purdue beats Indiana. That team up north, I'm not allowed to say their name, beats Ohio State, and Oregon defeats Washington. That will leave Oregon and that team up north in the Big Ten title game. Following me so far? Based on tiebreakers of non-head-to-head, 1-0 versus common opponents, and Oregon confirmed had the best overall record of conference opponents. It's convoluted, yes. That's scenario 5. Scenario 6. This would be, this is the most far-fetched scenario, but it would be crazy if it happens. If Purdue beats Indiana, and if that team up north beats Ohio State, and if Washington beats Oregon, guess who will be in the Big Ten championship game? Guess. That team up north and Ohio State will do it all over again, this time on a neutral field. That's right. If that scenario plays out, Ohio State and that team up north will meet again for the Big Ten championship game. Oh, that will be so crazy. That would be crazy. But that's scenario 6. Purdue beats Indiana. That team up north beats Ohio State. And Washington beats Oregon. In that scenario, that team up north and Ohio State will play again 1 week later at the Big Ten championship game. And here's the last scenario. It puts Ohio State and Indiana in. Purdue beats Indiana. Ohio State beats that team up north, and Washington beats Oregon. That puts Ohio State and Indiana in, with Indiana having 1 loss, Ohio State undefeated. So those are the clinching scenarios. So there's basically one scenario, actually 2 scenarios for Michigan, 1 scenario for Oregon, actually 2 scenarios for Oregon, 2 scenarios, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 scenarios for Ohio State, and about the same for Indiana. So there's 2 scenarios where Michigan can get in. There's 2 scenarios that Oregon can get in. There's 4 scenarios that Ohio State can get in, and I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4 scenarios for Indiana to get in. Yep, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 scenarios for Indiana to get in. So there's 5 for Indiana, 4 for Ohio State, and 2 each for Oregon and Michigan and that team up north. It's crazy, ain't it? But those are the clinching scenarios for the Big Ten. Now, let's move on to the ACC. ACC. Let's move on. This is crazy too. Now, remember I told you earlier that one team had its destiny in its hands, and if they'd have won last weekend, they would have been in. They would have had the berth in the ACC championship game all wrapped up, and that was Georgia Tech. And they had the dream scenario. They were at home. They were at home playing against a team in Pittsburgh that just got their head lopped off by Notre Dame. You would think Georgia Tech, no problem, right? Wrong. Pittsburgh came to play, and they picked them off 42-28 in Atlanta, in Georgia Tech's building. So now, Georgia Tech needs a little bit of help. Not a lot, but they need a little bit. They need a little bit. It's possible they can get that help, but they need help nonetheless. So, here is the scenarios as I as posted on an article online for the ACC. Now, in the ACC, there are 6 teams still alive for a berth in the ACC championship game. They are Virginia, SMU, Pittsburgh, Miami, Duke. Yes, Duke. We're talking football, not basketball. Football. Duke Blue Devils and Georgia Tech. 6 teams still alive, mathematically or otherwise, for a berth in the ACC championship game. Let's break it down. For Virginia, path to the ACC championship game is pretty easy. They only need to beat Virginia Tech, their last game. They beat them, they're in. Easy path for the Virginia Cavaliers. They beat the traditional rival Virginia Tech, they're in. They're in the ACC championship game. Now, SMU, they in if they win. So these 2 teams control their own destiny. Virginia and SMU. They win, they're in. Everybody else sit back and wait. Sit back and watch on TV. SMU, Virginia, they win their last games, they're in. SMU plays, I believe, who are they playing? Louisville. Virginia plays Virginia Tech. So, those 2 teams win, they're in. Now, let's go to the Pittsburgh Panthers. For them to make it to the ACC championship game, they would need to beat Miami and hope that either SMU or Virginia loses their last game. So, Pitt beats Miami, and they either have to have SMU or Virginia lose. And they're going to the ACC championship. The Miami Hurricanes, they probably have the more complicated path. Because remember, they have 2 conference losses. 2 conference losses. So, when the Hurricanes do somehow make it to the ACC championship, they have to actually, obviously, beat Pittsburgh. Right? And then have Virginia and Duke lose their games. That's one path. The other path, they need to win, and they need SMU, Duke, and North Carolina to lose. Based on tiebreakers, that's what they would need to have happen. That's their 2 paths to the ACC championship game. They have to win and hope Virginia and Duke lose their games, or win and have SMU, Duke, and North Carolina lose. Is this making sense to you? It's barely making sense to me, and I'm looking at it. But that's what's got to happen. That's Miami's path to the ACC or paths to the ACC championship game. Now let's look at the Duke Blue Devils. Yes, I'm talking about football, not basketball. They're only 6-5, but they're still alive because they only have 2 conference losses. So, for the Duke Blue Devils to make it to Charlotte in the ACC championship game, they need to win. They need Miami to beat Pittsburgh. They would then need either SMU or NC State to lose, and Virginia to lose to Virginia Tech. They need a lot of teams to lose. Duke needs to win. They need Pittsburgh to lose. They need SMU to lose. They need NC State. All right. So Duke needs to win, and they need Miami to beat Pittsburgh, and then they would need either SMU or NC State to lose, and they need Virginia to lose to Virginia Tech. They have a very complicated path to Charlotte. I'm pretty sure you don't know what huh? Who got to lose? I'll say it one more time. They need Duke Blue Devils. They need to win their game. Right? They need Miami to beat Pittsburgh. Then they would need either SMU or North Carolina State to lose, and they would need Virginia to lose. Crazy, ain't it? That's a lot of. They need a lot of. In layman's terms, they need to win and get a whole hell of a lot of help. That's how we put it. That's how us regular fans, but they need to win. They need a whole hell of a lot of help. They need help like from higher power. They need a lot of help, but that's their scenarios for getting to Charlotte in the ACC championship game. And now Georgia Tech, who had their destiny in their hands until they lost last weekend to Pittsburgh. So for Georgia Tech to get to Charlotte, Georgia Tech must beat Cal. Oh, wait a minute. Georgia Tech, let me rephrase that. Georgia Tech needs SMU to lose, and they need Virginia to lose. And then they would need either Wake Forest to beat Duke or Pittsburgh to lose. You get all that? I'll say it again. For them to get to Charlotte, they need to win. Obviously they need to win. But, actually, no, because they play Georgia. So whether they win or lose won't matter. What they need help from outside, from other conference teams. That's the help they need. And they need SMU to lose to Cal. They need Virginia to lose to Virginia Tech. They need Duke to lose to Wake Forest. And they need Pittsburgh to lose to Miami. So they need basically 4 teams to lose for them to get in. That's the scenario they put themselves in when they lost last week to Pittsburgh. There's nothing they can do about their controlling their own destiny. They blew that. And they don't have no more conference games. So they basically need 4 teams to lose this weekend. But that's Georgia Tech's path to Charlotte. So, as you can see, the ACC is a mess with 6 teams and anywhere of 8 scenarios. The ACC is a convoluted mess. Don't you just love parody? Only thing I'm surprised about is Clemson's not in this mix. Florida State's not in this mix. You would figure those two traditional college football, somewhat blue bloods, would be somewhere in this mix. They ain't nowhere in it. Clemson, Florida State. They're basically on rebuild mode, really. But that's where that parity come in. Virginia, Duke, Georgia Tech. You really don't never hear these names come up as actually having chances to win the ACC championship. SMU. I mean, they were in it last year. Hell, they were in the playoffs last year. And they got a chance to do the same thing this year. Remember, conference championship, the winners of the conference championships of the Power Four conference automatically get bids. They automatically are included in the college football playoff, regardless of record. So SMU could go right back there again. Virginia could be in it. Duke could actually be in the college football playoff. It's possible. It's possible. Crazy, ain't it? All right, one more. Let's go with now the Big 12, the last of the Power Four conferences. Now, according to one line of things that they just put out, I believe, this morning, BYU has the easiest course to the Big 12 championship. BYU and Texas Tech. All they need to do is win. All they need to do is win their last game. BYU is playing, let me see. They're playing UCF, University of Central Florida, at home. They win, they're in. Texas Tech, they play at West Virginia. They win, they're in. But Texas Tech also can get in if Arizona State loses. So Texas Tech has two ways to get in. They either win and they in, or Arizona State takes a loss. But those are the two easiest paths to the Big 12 championship game. Now let's look at everybody else. Phew. 14. You got Utah, you got BYU, Texas Tech, Utah, and Arizona State. Now, if the Sun Devils win and BYU loses by some miracle, they will be going to the Big 12 championship game. Again, Arizona State wins and somehow BYU loses to UCF at home. Arizona State will participate for the second year in a row in the Big 12 championship game. Utah somehow is still alive. But for Utah to get in to make that trip to Arlington, Texas for the Big 12 championship game, they need BYU to lose. They need to beat Kansas. Arizona State would need to beat Arizona. And West Virginia would need to beat Texas Tech. That's their only scenario for getting in. They need to win, have BYU lose, Texas Tech lose, and Arizona lose. That's the Utes' only path. So they're in a win, and we need a lot of help scenario. A lot of help that you really just don't see happening with BYU being so strong, losing at home to a very mediocre UCF team. You don't see that happening. But that's the scenario that they're in, and that's the scenario that they have to ride with. Nothing else will do. Nothing else will do. They got to get, that's their only way in. Their only way in. So, that's it. Those are the clinching scenarios for the teams left remaining alive in the Power Four conferences. That's it. Crazy, ain't it? Hey, I think it's wonderful to have all this parity and all these crazy scenarios. It's like almost like it's like the NFL, where you have all these scenarios with teams making the playoffs late in the season. The same thing here. It's the same thing here. It is the same thing, and you gotta love it. You really do. You have got to love it. If you don't, whether your team, whether your team has a clinching scenario or not, whether your team has no hope, like as far as these teams are still alive and they got very little hope, they still got hope. It might not be a lot, but they still got it. And anything can happen. Like I said, this is rivalry weekend. Anything can happen. And I mean anything. So don't shut yourself out yet. If you're one of these teams, if you're a fan of one of these teams that need a whole lot of help, don't shut the door yet. I know you probably we ain't got a chance. Man, forget it. We're done. This is not gonna happen. Crazier things have happened in college football. They have. So don't close the door and lock it just yet. Let's see what happens. Like I said, this rivalry weekend. Look at me, Ohio State. We've been number one all year. We ain't clinched nothing yet, though. And we may not clinch anything if we don't take care of business this weekend against that team up north. So I'm in the same boat you are. We haven't clinched nothing yet. Everybody, out of the Alabamas, the A&Ms, Indianas, Georgias, everybody, Ole Miss, everybody, you ain't clinched the damn thing yet. We haven't. So don't throw your hopes up too high or get them too low. Just see how this weekend plays out. And it's also going to be interesting because, as you all know, tonight, the next week of the college football playoff rankings will be released tonight. So it's definitely going to be interesting going into the final weekend of the season where teams are placed at. The Miamis, how far Georgia Tech fall, where's Notre Dame? Are they're probably gonna stay in the top 10. But who's right there with them? What about Vanderbilt? How far did they move up? Michigan, that team up north, excuse me. Where are they at now in the pecking order? There's going to be a lot of jockeying, especially below 10. There's going to be a lot of movement. There's going to be a few movement, especially with Georgia Tech taking a bad loss. There's going to be a lot of movement. And then don't worry, what about the group of 4 or group of 5? What about them? Who's going to join Tulane? If anybody is going to join Tulane in that mix. We'll see that tonight. And we'll talk about it. We'll definitely talk about the top 25 release rankings on tomorrow's show here in Total Sports Ozone. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And oh yes, I am now on TikTok at Total Sports Ozone. Got a new one. And I will be posting clips on my new Instagram at Total Sports Ozone. I will be doing that shortly. So I'm now on TikTok and I'm now on Instagram. So give me a follow, take a like, see what you like about that stuff. Okay? Big O with a big mouth, Total Sports Ozone. Now, let's get into Top 5 Tuesday, where I post my top 5, my Power 5 teams in both college football and in the NFL. So, without further ado, let's get into my top 5 for college football as of the end of week 13. Really hasn't been much change because one of the teams in the top, my top 5 were idle, and the other ones, all of them took care of business. They did what they're supposed to do. So, my top 5 really hasn't changed. Number 5 is still Oregon Ducks at 10-1. And they're definitely on one of those teams that they need to win and get some help to get into get to the Big Ten championship game because that one loss, unfortunately, was to Indiana. So they're in a win and need some help scenario. And they're playing, I wouldn't say they're a traditional rival, but it is a border rival, Washington Huskies. So they did look very good last weekend, beating USC and pretty much knocking USC out of any hope of anything, Big Ten or college football playoff. They're pretty much done. And it was a game both teams needed because Oregon lose that game, their possibility of going to the college football playoff would have dipped probably below 50% because they really didn't have much really quality, a lot of quality wins on there, especially with they had one quality win that was with Penn State, but that win doesn't hold much weight because how bad Penn State fell off the map. So they really didn't have too many quality wins. So if they lost this game, this was their next quality win, beating USC. So if they'd have lost this game, their chances of going to the college football playoff would have been, like I said, below 50%. They probably would have been left out. With 2 losses, they probably would have been left out. When you talk about the Vanderbilts, and especially Vanderbilt. So they needed that win. They got it. They got it. So I'll keep the Ducks at number 5. My number 14 will be Georgia Bulldogs. They took care of business. Oh, yeah, they took care. But, of course, they play some, what they play? Sanford, something like that. They played some cupcake. Or Charlotte. Yeah, they did what they're supposed to do. Going into their rivalry game, their traditional rivalry game against Georgia Tech this weekend. They took care of business. And they are where they are, 10-1. But again, they need help to get to the SEC championship game. They do need some help. They need Alabama to lose. Basically, they need Alabama to lose. So that's their one blemish on their record is that loss to Alabama. So Georgia does need some help. But they're definitely going to the playoff. There's no doubt about that. But they want to repeat. If they want to repeat as SEC champions, need some help. They're going to need some help this weekend. So that leaves my top 3 at the same. Number 3, we have Texas A&M. Of course, they blew out a cupcake this weekend, so they took care of business. But now they got a big one. They got a big one, too. Heading to Austin to play University of Texas, a night game in Austin. That's not going to be no cakewalk. I mean, Texas A&M is strong, especially on offense. That guy Reed, he is the truth. The quarterback Reed is the truth. But this is going to be a very desperate Texas Longhorn team that they're going to be playing this Friday. I think the game is Friday. Or is it Saturday? Well, I don't know. It's this weekend. They're going to be playing a very desperate Texas Longhorn squad. They know their only hope, their only hope of a sprinkle of a prayer, of a Hail Mary of a prayer to get into the college football playoff is they got to beat the Texas A&M Aggies, and they got to beat them pretty bad. I mean, they're gonna have to wipe the field with them. I mean, they're gonna have to blow them out of Memorial Stadium if they want to have any hope. Because with 3 losses, yeah, if they didn't let Bama in last year with 3 losses, they're not gonna let Texas in with 3 losses. Even if they just get by Texas A&M, they need to blow them out, and I don't see that happening. Texas A&M is a very strong team. Very strong team. I don't like their defense in the college football playoff, but they are strong offensively. Very strong. But they took care of business this weekend, which is why I kept them at number 3. And of course, number 2, ain't no sense of me moving Indiana off of number 2. They had a bye week. And they're playing Purdue. Enough said. And that keeps number one at Ohio State. They did what they supposed to do. Took care of business against Rutgers. But now, their bugaboo, the biggie, the game. This is all that matters. This is the only game that matters in the regular season. If you're an Ohio State player and fan, this is the only game that matters. None of those, all those other games, they were preliminaries. They're tune-ups. They're prelims. This is the main event this Saturday, high noon in the East. This is the main event, the game, the only game that matters. Only game. None of them other games matter. And if you're a Buckeye fan, like I am, you know what I'm talking about. It's the only game that matters. And if Ohio State want to keep that number one beside that logo, they got to beat this team. That team up north. And like I said yesterday, with any rivalry, you throw the records out the window. Stats, the standings, all that, none of that matters. None of it. When you playing your traditional rival and the hatred and the passion and the oneness to beat that team so bad, the hatred for that other team is real. It's paramount. It's there. It never goes away. You're talking about 365 days of pain if you lose. So standings, record, you worry about all that after the game. But right now, before the game, none of that matters. The rankings, none of it. Standings, stats, who you think is better than who, it doesn't matter. All that matters is they're gonna get it down, get it on, and get down and see what happens. And that's what all these rivals is. But Ohio State, Michigan, they take it to the next level. They always take it to the next level. There's a reason why all these publications, national publications and sports entities and organizations have claimed Ohio State, Michigan, that team up north. I keep saying that. They claim that rivalry is the best rivalry, not just in college football, but in all of North American sports. That rivalry, because the hate is real. Not only the hate is real, there's always something major on the line when these two teams play. Always. And this is no different. Ohio State, that team up north, we're talking about a Big Ten championship game appearance on the line. And for Michigan, the chance, their biggest opportunity, Michigan, that team up north, it's their opportunity to make the college football playoff. It's their biggest opportunity. They lose this game, they're done. It's all or nothing for this game for that team up north. All or nothing. So you know they're going to be playing hard. And for Ohio State, this is the way they can validate their season. Because everybody just said they haven't played anybody in. They hadn't played nobody in. And they've had an easy schedule and blah, 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 blah. All right. All those games were preliminaries. Here's the real deal. Their rival, who they have not beaten since 2019. 4 years they've lost in a row. They didn't play in 2020 because of COVID, but they've lost them 4 years in a row. Oh, if they need to validate their season in the eyes of the committee and the haters and the fans, they got to win this game. And it's in Ann Arbor. And it's going to be cold. Might snow. Perfect weather for the game. But for this week, that's my top 5. It hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed. Mainly because either teams on the bye or they were playing cupcakes. Except Oregon. Oregon had to play a game they needed. But the other 4 teams and other 3 teams, Indiana was about, and the other 3 teams, they played a cupcake. A tune-up game for to get into their last game of the season, of the regular season. So, we'll see. Big old with the big mouth. Big O with the big mouth, Total Sports, Ozone. Now, let me pull up my NFL top 5. That might have changed. I'm going to tell you right now, that might have changed. That definitely might have changed on me. Because it ain't who you think it is. I had to do some changing on this one. And I did that today. Because of, after last night's game. I had to make a change, but it wasn't a big one. It wasn't a big one in my opinion. It wasn't a big one, but one of my top 5 did lose, so I had to. They had to move. They had to go. They had to move them out. Had to move them out. So here's my top 5 NFL teams as of the end of week 12. And we're gonna go number 5. The Seattle. I put the Seahawks right back into my top 5 after they won on the road against the Titans. I'm telling you guys, Jackson Smith-Njigba is a beast. He is almost unguardable. He really is. The way he catches the ball anywhere, if you throw it anywhere near him, he's gonna go get it. It don't matter if the defender is draped all over his back. It doesn't matter. He's gonna go get that ball. He's the best wide receiver in the game today, and it ain't even close. Right now, he's the best wide receiver in the game today. It ain't even close. And he's the reason why the Seahawks, he's a big reason why the Seahawks are 8-3 and right there nipping on the heels of the LA Rams in the NFC West. He is the big reason for that. I'm saying, if he does not get NFC Offensive Player of the Year, something is wrong. Something went really wrong. He deserves it. He has played it. He has 1,300 yards receiving. We still got, 7 games left? Something like that. That man could actually get 2,000 receiving yards. Did y'all know that? He's actually on track to get 2,000 receiving yards. That's crazy. But that's Jackson Smith-Njigba. Best wide receiver in the NFL as of right now. And he's a big reason why I have the Seattle Seahawks back in my top 5. All right, number 4, I moved up. Number 4, I moved the Colts down a spot because of their loss they took to the Kansas City Chiefs in overtime. I wasn't going to knock them out of my top 5 because it was a quality loss. And they were dominating that game. They were up 20-9 in the fourth quarter, and then they just fell victim to what Pat Mahomes has been doing to a lot of teams pretty much all his career. Make these crazy comebacks and leave you wondering, what the hell happened? That's what happened with the Colts. But like I said, they'll learn. It's not like they got blown away on this one. They let this one get away, and I think they know that. But they're still one of the better teams in the AFC. So I'm keeping the Colts in my top 5 at number 4. I moved Denver up to number 3, even though they had a bye. But 9-2 is 9-2. No arguments needed there. 9-2 is 9-2. I know their offense is a little wishy-washy, but they have one of the better defenses in football. They stay at number 3. I moved them up to number 3, that is. And number 2 is still the New England Patriots. What can you say? This is not the Patriots I thought they were going to be over the last couple of years. I didn't see this coming. And I know a lot of y'all didn't see this coming. This team is turning to be a very dominant team. It's like they win they win any way they can win. If they need to beat you with defense, they'll beat you with defense. If they need to beat you with offense, so be it. But they find ways to win these games. They won a lot of close games against Tampa Bay, against Atlanta, just won against Cincinnati. They won a lot of close games. Buffalo, they won a lot of one-score games. They're finding ways to win those games. And that's the mark of a championship team, don't you think? I think so. I keep New England number 2. They deserve that. And the number 1 team, and this isn't even a debate. After how I saw them do Tampa Bay last Sunday night, there was no debate. There don't need to be any debate who the number 1 team is in the NFL, and that's the Los Angeles Rams. There don't need to be no debate on that. If you saw how they played against Tampa Bay, both offense and defense, there's no debate. They are the best team in the NFL as of right now, and it's not even close. They have the offense with Stafford, Chua, and Devontae Adams. This is hard for this team to be stopped. And on defense, you see they beat up Baker Mayfield, knocked him out the game with a hurt shoulder. They're relentless on defense. If they smell blood, they're coming after you. This team has the makers to go all the way in the NFC. They have the makers to do that. They don't have too many weaknesses. They really don't. Now, I know the Seahawks are right there on nipping at their heels, but right now, for my money, I got the Rams as the best team in the NFL. So those are my top 5 teams as of the end of Week 12 in the National Football League. What do you think? What do you think? You have a team that should be in the top 5? Or one of those teams don't belong in the top 5? What do you think? Drop a comment. Let me know. Let me know. All right, that's going to do it for the big old with the big mouth today in the Total Sports Ozone. Tomorrow, you know what we're going to do tomorrow. We're going to go over the college football playoff rankings. You know we're going to probably spend the most of the hour dealing with that. Because I gave you the clinching scenario for the Power 4 teams to go into the conference championship. So we got to go over college football playoff rankings and how these scenarios could play out in the college football playoff. We got to get into that. And we gonna get into that. Plus, I've been promising to delve into the NBA. We're going to do that tomorrow. We're going to look at a little bit of the NBA because the Thunder is being the Thunder. The Lakers have surprised me as how they've been playing without LeBron. They're just getting him back. And there's been a couple other surprises, not really in a great way in the NBA as of the first month, roughly first month of the season. We're going to be trying to if we have time, and I definitely will try to have time to get into all that on tomorrow's live stream. So, Big O with the big mouth getting out of here for the day. Remember, hit the like and subscribe. I do this for you. I'm a fan doing this for the fan. So, have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow right back here in the Total Sports Ozone. See ya.